Mike's on Mike, a conversation about politics, government, and Jacksonville, with 50-year opinion leaders Mike Hightower, Mike Tolbert, and award-winning broadcaster and longtime political observer, Mike Miller.
Welcome to another edition of Mike's on Mike. I'm Mike Miller, along with Mike Tolbert, Mike Hightower, who are both remote today, and we're delighted to have you with us. As always, of course, Mike's on Mike brought to you by the Jacksonville History Center. And, of course, our thanks to Dr. Alan Bliss and his fine staff, as well as our very generous donors who help us keep the lights on and the cameras rolling. Today, Mike's on Mike has a guest of Dr. Rahman Johnson. Dr. Johnson, who's about to enter his third year as a member of the Jacksonville City Council. Councilman Johnson represents District 14, and as a Democrat among a majority Republican council, we wanted to find out what it's going to be like to navigate through the current politics in City Hall. Now, Dr. Johnson has been a professor of journalism at Edward Waters University. He was named Professor of the Year in 2021. Congratulations. Didn't realize that. He's acted on stage and screen, and many say that's what he's doing right now on the City Council, as a matter of fact. But he's acting, and he's going to get I'm sure you're going to get at least an Emmy, if not an Oscar for it. And he also hosted his own game show on Nickelodeon, believe it or not. He's been a TV news anchor as well as a communications consultant. And for 4 years, he hosted his own podcast, The Rahman Experience. And we just found out today that he was also a conductor at CSX.
Oh, you saw that. You just went digging deep in my life, right?
Well, we don't have time to talk about anything because your thing is so long. Anyhow, welcome to Mike's on Mike.
It's so good. It's so good to see you, my friend. I've known you, I feel like all my life. And all the mics have in some ways played a really big part in my life for all of my adult life and most of my life period. So before we start, thank you. Mike, thank you.
Good to have you here. Mr. Tolbert, kick it off for us.
Yeah, Rahman, it's good to see you, buddy. You grew up in Jacksonville, and like you just said, we go back a hell of a long way.
Yes.
I remember you as being young and smart and eager and even brash, and you were always in a hurry as a young man. I sense that nothing has changed over the years with you. In 2023, you were elected to represent District 14, and that's what we call the West Side. I think there's some uniqueness to your election I want to point out. It goes all the way to the Clay County line. It includes 103rd Street, Argyle Forest, and Oak Leaf Plantation. It also includes Avondale, Lakeshore, and Riverside. You're the first person of color ever elected to represent that district. And you got into the race late against two former Republican city council members. I have two questions. One is, what prompted you to run? And second, why the hell did you wait so late to get in?
Those are great questions, but I'm going to start out with the fact that I did move a lot quicker when I was younger. But I will tell you that I am, and I don't want to date anybody in this space, I'll be 50 next year.
I'm the youngest of the three of us.
I'll be 50. And you guys have known me since I was before, as Hightower and I were just talking, you knew me before I was in my teens. I'm just saying, and I'll be 50.
Yeah.
In months.
Good.
I'm just going to let that hang out there for a minute. But you guys still look good. That's number one.
I knew the Botox kicked in.
Answer the question.
Okay, so here's the reason. Number one, let me correct a little bit. So District 14 is no longer Avondale and Riverside. That has come out, and which is a little weird. It's District 7 now. So it's a little bit different. I run 103rd Street, everything south, which includes the base, Argyle Forest, Oak Leaf Plantation, all that stuff. So it's a little bit of a different district. The reason, though, and you're right, it's never been any person of color or a Democrat that's ever represented that since the founding of our city in 1968, the consolidation, rather. But I will tell you, the reason that I got in so late wasn't my fault. It was a judge. Judge Morales Howard was looking at the maps of the way it went back. There was the district maps were going in, right? Yep. Redistricting. And they were going back and forth. The council sent over the maps. The judge said, hey, there were a couple of lawsuits that went out. It didn't gel for what the judge saw. So she sent the map back to the council. Council moved the districts over like one street and sent it back. And she's like, wait a minute. This is just not, you guys are playing with me. And so she literally went and redrew the map where the districts were more compact and they were contiguous. rather than these snake-like districts that snaked all throughout the city. And so when I looked at the district, and by the way, I'm writing a book about the experience. The book is called 71 Days, and I'm about 9 chapters in. It's going to be about 12, I think. So it's a pretty interesting look at redistricting, how we got where we are, and how it was being in an election of 71 days. The judge did not make that decision until January because the initial decision was made in December, in late December, right after Christmas. There was an appeal that went in. And so the judge then denied the appeal from the city and the settlement was to move forward. Well, I didn't even have time to get signatures on petitions. I had to pay the qualifying fee because it just wasn't enough time. And so it was because of a judicial decision. But 71 days later, as Mike, as you said earlier, there was a former city council president and a former city council member, both in this race. And so it not only was incumbent upon me to figure out how do I educate the electorate to say, here's something that you've never seen before, but it allows our district to move in a way that we've never moved before. And they saw that, and that's why I'm here.
Councilman, what about the first question, Mike Tolbert? What prompted you to run to begin with?
People. I will tell you, I make this statement. It's like my home was magically transported. I went to teach my classes at Edward Waters one morning. By the time I came back, my house was in another council district. And I'll say one of those people, God rest his soul, was Ben Frazier. Ben called me at the office at Edward Waters, and he's, in the Ben Frazier voice, like, the young man, this is decision has been made and you must run. I'm like, what are you talking about? And you guys know me. I've run for Soil and Water, and that made me the youngest elected official in the state of Florida back when I was knee-high to a duck. And I won, and then I ran a few years later for state representative. And Mike, thank you. And I was always privy to wise counsel. Maybe everybody couldn't support me, but privy to that. I did not win the state representative election. And so I, to be honest, had thought that the elected office hat that I was wearing, I had hung it up 20 years ago. But I got the calls and I looked at the district and looked at the numbers and saw it was a possibility. And here's one thing that is probably most important to me. As you guys all know, I'm African American, but I think it's really unfair that for you to say that I have to live in a quote unquote black district to represent people. That's just, if you are the best candidate and you bring something to the table, you're pragmatic, you're willing to study and willing to put in the work. I don't care if you're brown with purple spots. I want you representing me. And so I felt as though I had something to bring to the table that I didn't have 20 years ago.
By the way, just a real quick aside. Sure. Did you know that Ben Frazier was a TV news anchor in Detroit?
I did. Yeah. I did. I've been knowing Ben. He's the reason why, one of the reasons, I'll tell you, I got a chance in my career through the Association of Black Journalists to know Mac Freeman, of course, here, and Ben, but also, Max Robinson and so many of these legendary anchors and reporters. And so I knew him from here. And when I became an anchor, Ben is one of the first people I talked to. And he even shared with me, my life hasn't been easy. Here are the pitfalls you should avoid if you're going to be in this business. And you know what I'm talking about.
Help me understand Alberta Hips, who is an icon in that district. And I'm like, I'm going to pick up on what you said.
Sure.
As an African American, but you were going up against Alberta Hips as an icon in that district. There was the other person. Get that. Alberta. The race was really between you and Alberta.
Yes.
Walk us through your thought process, my friend.
So I, too, Frank, who I'm extremely fond of, we would shop at the same Ace Hardware, getting our flowers and stuff for the yard. Her husband, Frank, I consider him a dear friend. I consider her my friend. I love her. I was not running against the icon Alberta Hips. I was running for this new district. I picked up the phone and called her when it came time. And I'm like, I think I can win this. No, I know I can, looking at the numbers. Alberta, as you said, which we didn't mention, is a former city council president. So she was not only going to raise all the money, she had name recognition, but she'd also had it 20 years before, right? And the other opponent, who I'll say his name, John Draper, was one of the few people that voted against having the Jacksonville Jaguars come to Jacksonville. Like, he was one of the no votes. So these are two people who've been around that kind of politics for a long time. However, the district was different. It was not the same. Oak Leaf Plantation had a more cosmopolitan reach. At the time when Alberta and John represented those areas, they were much more rural. There was a lot more farmland. There were, huge tracts of spaces, but not a lot of people. And now these spaces have been developed. They're homes. There are dual college educated households with kids who want to see something different. And so it's not that people didn't like Alberta. In fact, I respected her. And as my friend and also as a member of the Republican Party's executive committee, I knew that she couldn't endorse me specifically. But I went to her to say, and I told them this both as I debated them on various stages, I'm going to win. I'm going to beat you. But I'm going to turn around as soon as I beat you and call you to work with you both. And I've done exactly what I said. The next day, I didn't wait on them to call me. I respect Alberta just that much. I called her, and I'll tell you, Mike, one of the biggest signature accomplishments that have happened for 25 years. You guys remember when the Better Jacksonville plan came about. They've been trying to get Old Middleburg Road widened for 25 years. It was not in the CIP plans. It was not anywhere. We were probably going to get it done maybe in 2030, 2032. And I did everything but, cartwheels and stomp on desks. But I was put in office on July 1st, 2023. By July 1st, 2024, we had shovels in the ground and heavy earth equipment. And it's beautiful now, the start of this Old Middleburg Road project. I tell you that to say, when I did it, I didn't go to say Rahman Johnson did it. Now, there were 20 years of people before me who were there, and there were all kind of stones put in that wall to build it. But what I wanted to do is show what it looked like when we worked together. And so I made sure that standing on both sides of me when we started that construction project and broke ground was Alberta Hips and John Draper. And John Delaney was there, and all of the other former mayors and former council members that I could gather from that district were standing with me, because I wouldn't be here. Democrat, Republican, black, white, different sides of town. I think Terry Fields was there, some other, Doyle Carter, others. I wanted them with me. And to me, that means the world, because I learned from you all.
Let's talk about some of the issues that have been before the city council since you've been on there.
Sure.
One of them, which is of special interest to me, has to do with the undocumented immigrants in our city. One bill that passed can lead to a 60-day jail sentence for any immigrant without legal status found in the county. You opposed that bill, and you voted that. The other bill that passed scrutinizes funding by nonprofits for immigration services to undocumented immigrants. It was vetoed by the mayor and was upheld by the council majority, which was great. And with Councilman Carrico coming in now and becoming council president, do you have concerns that we're going to continue on this track of cultural issues rather than getting to filling potholes and collecting garbage and doing the essential services that we found out from at least people that responded to a UNF poll, that's the most important thing to them?
Well, Tommy Hazuri, who, as you know, I've got a picture in my office with when I was about 11 or 12 down on Duval Street with Tommy and I was his chief youth initiatives advisor, if that was a thing that he made up back in 88 and or 87 when he was elected. And he would always say this quote, besides the other colorful things that he said, but that street lights and potholes don't have party affiliations. Yeah. And I really take that to account, because I believe that. I am going to say there's this thing that I live by. Perpetual optimism is a force multiplier. I am optimistic. I don't know what it's going to. I'll tell you, as you said, I did oppose both of those bills. I'll say the latter is probably the most egregious because of the fact that it was amended 5 times on council night. And any bill that takes 5 amendments on the night that it passes, after it had been beat up in committees and then drug on and deferred for months and months and months, simply means it was a bad bill from the inception. I'd put together an academic paper about it, all the specific issues with it. I did also amend the first bill that you talked about. And so while I do respect both Councilman Carrico, Council President Carrico now, and Councilman Diamond, who brought up the latter bill, I will say that I am optimistic. I don't want to go into this being tainted by what has happened. I will tell you, there's this culture of you're a Democrat, you're a Republican. And one of my colleagues, I won't say who, told me I was able to get the Johnny May Chappelle legislation passed, where we put a historic marker to remember Johnny May Chappelle. For those that don't know, African-American woman died in a racist attack back in the 1960s, and she never got her due. From the Justice Department, I went back and did the research and brought it together. While the case had been dismissed by the Justice Department, we were able to get a historic marker in her honor put there. And what I believe, and in my remarks there, I talked about finding ways to find synergy to move forward. I cannot be angry, because anger will then cloud the work that I have to do while I'm on this council. I say the same in this space. I can't allow past actions to stop the work of getting things done in my district. I'm building parks. I sit on the JSEB special committee, so small businesses have a bigger opportunity to get contracts from city agencies and those agencies that do, or companies that do business with the city. There are just so many great opportunities. And if I sit back to say, well, you did this to me then, I've got to be bigger and better. Might I look back in 10 years and write another book and say, these were some dastardly times? Maybe. But for now, I just don't have that luxury. As I told my colleague who does not look like me, you chose to be in this space because that's a choice. For me, as an African-American man who has had certain amazing privileges in my life, for me, it's a responsibility.
I want to follow up with this. When our mutual dear friend Audrey Moran was running for mayor, and I remember having a meeting with her after she kicked off her campaign, and she said, one of the first things I want to do, my damnedest to do, is to get rid of partisan labels for city council members. Do it like they do with the school board. Obviously, she didn't win mayor, and nor did anybody pick up that mantle and decide they were going to run for it. But as we've seen since that campaign, the partisanship is getting stronger and stronger in city council. I work for Delaney, as you know, and I mean, we didn't see that kind of response from the Democrats against him either. Is this going to continue? Or can we get to a point where people are going to start working together for the common good instead of for the political good?
Well, it takes us, though, us being in the space. I don't mind having the label of a Democrat. Yes, the label is not there for school board. But best believe we can look at the school board and say that's the Democrat and that's the Republican. And that's okay.
Moms for Liberty.
I'm just saying, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. But I believe it takes people, and I'll say like me, who are sitting at the table, who are Democrats, who I may not agree with everything the Democratic Party says, but a good majority of them, the tenets of the Democratic platform, I do believe in and do agree with. But that doesn't have a foothold in local government. There are things that, is the trash getting picked up? Is the water running? Do you have services for people who need help? Those are the core bread and butter issues that we need to be concerned about. I don't think there's going to be based on what I know and conversations I've had, there's just not an appetite to go and remove the party labels from it. It would have to come from the state legislature. It's just not going to happen at this point. But I believe you have to have people like me. I've even reached out to, Scooter, who's the chairman of the Republican Party. I met Scooter. I've never met him before. I met him on the campaign trail when we were both running for city council. I count Scooter as a friend now, right? We talk to each other. And I had someone tell me in my district who happened to be, and I hate to bring up race, but it's relevant here. There was this white man and he came to me and he says, I didn't vote for you. I didn't like you. But now that I've got to know you, I'm so glad that you're representing me.
That's great.
And you know what he ended with? It's hard to hate what you know.
Very interesting.
And I can't say it any better. He's just a simple guy, and I get it. If more people would take time, instead of going into their corner saying, well, I'm going to do this because you have this label behind you. I'm so glad I grew up with parents that made me think beyond labels. Yeah, I grew up Catholic, born and raised. I was christened in the Immaculate Conception downtown in the vestibule, right in the back. That's where I was back in the 1970s. I am very Catholic. I'm devoted to my faith. I'm, appreciative of it. I jokingly say, because we found out the Pope has some Haitian and Creole roots. So I'm like, my cousin, the Pope, I make jokes about it. But I'll tell you, the beauty is thanks to my wonderful mother, I've gone to temple at Jewish synagogues. I've prayed at Muslim mosques. I've been to Shinto shrines. I have a respect for all of those things. Does that mean I'm going to run out and convert? No. I'm very, very happy being little Catholic Rahman. But I will tell you the beauty of the spaces that I can respect all of those places and spaces, and that we can all grow together. And that's what I think we must do more of on the council.
There was a lot that was accomplished when people said, what do we want to do for Jacksonville? What do we want to do for the quality of life? And they weren't so interested in what the party affiliation was when they were voting. And I just keep saying, guys, I think you're tone deaf. And I appreciate that. But you're absolutely right. The only one that's going to change it are the people who sit there on that council. And they're going to decide on what the environment and how people view elected officials. I'm sorry, I got away from Mr. Talbert's question. Apologize.
That's okay. I'm looking at the clock and we're running out of time. So, Rodman, I want to bring this back to a more personal level. You wrote a book of poems about your mother, Ida Ross Johnson, and it was called Living, Loving, Letting Go. And in 2021, it was named Book of the Year by a group within the Latin American Library Association. I want you to tell us about Ida Ross Johnson, your mother, and how she impacted your life.
She was a speech pathologist, audiologist that went to the University of Miami at a time when you didn't see that back in the late 60s. And she was just this amazing world, just a citizen, citoyen du monde. I speak, decent French, and I mean citizen of the world. That's what my mother was. I traveled, but she instilled in me. That's why, I mentioned those going to experience the different religions and different spaces. She was just that open, right? And she converted to Catholicism. My mother grew up AME as a child, but when she got to Miami, and I'll tell you why, because I asked her, why'd you make us Catholic? She certainly gave me the opportunity to be what I wanted to be. But she said, when I was on the campus of University of Miami, and there were very few Black people here, no one looked like me. If I wanted to go to the church that I grew up in, that denomination, the church was closed. I could go to the Catholic church, go to Mass. The chapel was always open. And I felt that even if the people around me looked at me differently and didn't want to see me here, I felt seen there. And that was so powerful. I mean, here's this little girl from Jacksonville who decided that I want to, I'm going to make this move to transition my faith at obviously, what was my mom, like 19 or 20 when she made that decision. And I don't know that I would have been strong enough to do that, but that's the kind of woman it was, she was. I had been writing all my life as a journalist, of course, but poems were something that I would write in my spare time, right? And so here's this woman. You guys know I'm an actor. I'm a SAG-AFTRA equity actor, right? So not just the kind that does it, in community theater. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I've gotten some nice paychecks from it. And my mother was a Shakespearean actor par excellence. She could do Macbeth. I saw her do Lady Macbeth, and it brought tears to my eyes. She was that powerful of an actor. But she didn't become an actor because when she got married and she had a baby, she's like, I want to experience my career. But she's always, we grew up, my grandfather was a sleeping car porter who incidentally, and Talbert, you'll appreciate this. I don't know if you even knew this trivia. My grandfather was best friends with John Lee, Denise's dad. And they worked on the railroad together. I was born in May of 76. My grandfather died in October of 75. So he knew I was coming, but he never met me. But I know him through the stories of John Lee, Denise's dad. And so I tell you that that our families, these families, is Jacksonville, so small, as big as it is. But my mother was just in this way of I'd always written, but I never had the freedom to share those poems, right? Because I was a journalist or I was doing something more academic, so to speak. And when she passed away, she fought a brave battle with ovarian cancer up until the last. And she died in my arms at home. And it was the most beautiful experience. But there was this thing, and I never thought I would ever share those poems. COVID came. We're all stuck at home.
What else is there to do?
What else is there to do? And who knew it would be the book of the year? So yeah, that's my mom. Thank you for asking that question. I rarely get asked about her, and I also purposefully in my life refer to her now as Ida, because I would never have done that if she lived, because Black mamas in the South, and I wouldn't want to try it. But I will tell you, I want her to have the identity as not just Rahman's mom or Mrs. Johnson, but she was Ida, fiercely Ida. So thank you for that.
And thank you for being with us, Rahman. Yeah. This has been great. Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Tolbert.
Mr. Miller, I got to say this. Betty Holzendorf, I know you're watching, Mike Tolbert, both prove me bitter, an eye in the sky. He's a rock star. Both of you guys were right. Rahman, glad to have you today.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Mr. Tolbert, you had a comment you wanted to make based on last week's show.
Yeah, I'm going to correct something I said last week. And, I misspoke when I said that the Deerwood Palace, where Councilman Carrico was holding his installation party, was probably a private club inside the gates of Deerwood. I have now learned that it's not. It's a large venue, beautiful venue space that people can rent out and have events there, parties there. And I want to apologize to the good people at Deerwood Palace for making that mistake.
All right, sir. Thank you. And as I mentioned last week, we recently conducted a survey and were quite surprised to learn that around 90% of those of you who follow this program do so audibly and not by visual methods, so not by TV or by YouTube. So we have decided to make the change to audio only starting in August. In going audio only, we'll be able to maintain the quality of our show. We'll still be able to get great guests like Rahman Johnson, of course, and we'll also be able to continue going on and covering our production expenses with the fine donors that we have who have been helping us out. So we'll be on video for the rest of the month of July, and then in August we'll start on audio only, but we'll still be on every platform that we're on now, including YouTube, Facebook, and iSpotify, and all of the others. So want to give you that heads up. Meanwhile, it brings us to, once again, a huge thank you to our sponsor and our benefactor, Dr. Alan Bliss, and his fine staff over at the Jacksonville History Center, and most particularly to the sponsors who have helped keep this program going and allowed us to continue talking with you every week. Till then, the three of us will see you all again next week. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Hi, I'm Scott Westerman, and I produce Mike's on Mike, with a special thank you to listeners like you who support the program through your contributions to the Jacksonville History Center. 2 years ago, Dr. Alan Bliss and his team generously agreed to aggregate gifts from listeners like you to help pay for the production and distribution of Mike's on Mike. When you specify Mike's on Mike with your donation to the History Center, your support makes these programs possible. And you're engaging in a relationship with the premier organization that celebrates the rich history of our hometown. If you enjoy these weekly conversations, consider a contribution to the Jacksonville History Center at jackshistory.org. Say it's for Mike's on Mike. And if you're already a Mike's on Mike supporter, thank you.
Mike's on Mike with Mike Tolbert, Mike Hightower, and Mike Miller can be found on your favorite podcasting platform, Facebook, and YouTube. Visit the website at mikesonmike.com. Join us next time for more conversation with Mike's on Mike.